Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. My computer just decided to restart. That was weird. I woke up, it did some sort of an update today and said it needed to restart right off the bat. But last night, Monday Night Raw, pretty cool stuff. I can honestly tell you that I watched a little bit of the first hour of the show at work before I left. The opening to the new show, definitely the new feel. The commentators moving sort of a lot like it was back in 2002 when they were sort of at the top of the ramp. They have a new sort of setup location. They're not going to be ringside. Honestly, I don't think it's going to make the biggest difference in the world, but we'll see how that works out. A lot of interview segments throughout the show. Just sort of a different feel to Monday Night Raw. A lot of the things that we've been sort of looking for as wrestling fans to sort of shake things up over the years. One of the biggest shakeups of the whole show, honestly, in my mind, was Finn Balor. Definitely coming into Monday Night Raw. Definitely being a main focal point for WWE. I think that Finn Balor's been in the WWE system for 2 years, I believe. And when Finn Balor came in, it was a lot like when Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness got signed. I honestly really didn't know who they were, but because of the fact that there was so much buzz surrounding them, I went out of my way to make sure I found out who these guys were. More with Daniel Bryan than Nigel McGuinness. I did go to the wrestling sort of trading website, and I got this sort of, it was a lot of discs. I know I never even finished it. I want to think it was like either 12 discs of Daniel Bryan matches from his indie career wrestling in Japan or something like that. And the matches were great and gave me a huge backbone to sort of fall back on of watching this guy as he soared through NXT and then got on the main roster, won the United States Championship, so on and so forth. With Daniel Bryan came into WWE and he just sort of was. He was a standout guy because of what his name was, but you could definitely tell from watching NXT, he never won a match. They wanted his name for the recognition of Season 1 of NXT taking off. You could definitely tell that they wanted a guy like Wade Barrett to win the show, but they wanted Daniel Bryan to be there to bring fans in. And they basically squashed Daniel Bryan out as much as they could. He lost every match that he was in, and fans continued to vote for him, and fans continued to cheer for him because they could really tell that he was something special that we would have to wait. How many years was it between then and then? I guess it was 4 years, because I remember the NXT guys being at the top of the ramp at WrestleMania for the Battle Royal, watching the pre-show sort of deal. So 4 years before he would climb all the way to the top, winning the championship at WrestleMania 30. And that was a huge moment. Now here comes Finn Balor. He went to NXT. He sort of quickly became the guy of NXT, the guy that would bring people in to make sure they watched it, whether if they just watched NXT for the first time and saw Finn Balor and thought he was the coolest guy in the world, or they would wait and they would see the pay-per-views and they'd see this guy coming out dressed like a demon, crawling towards the ring, bringing this new sort of essence of like he has two characteristics. It's a lot like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where basically he is this normal Lego collecting, Lego playing dude who takes these weird pictures every time he goes places, standing there like an eye, and then he gets into this wrestling world and he's like the fucking rock star that is the coolest guy in the entire world. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that do things like stand-up comedians, people that are, lead singers of rock bands that, you see them in their normal lives and they just seem like the most normal person in the world. And then you get them on stage and they become this alter ego. And that's what I think Finn Balor, really is. When you watch the documentary that they did over in Ireland on him that I can't remember the name. It was called like Smack 'em Whack 'em or some stupid stuff like that. Or you watch the WWE documentary that came out before the Beast in the East show last year that sort of showed him adjusting to life in NXT. Both of those specials were honestly very good. I would go out of my way to watch either one of those if you haven't seen them yet. But a real cool, interesting look. But Finn Balor last night was named as one of the 8 competitors in the 2 fatal 4-ways to go up against Rollins at SummerSlam. When they named the matches, I honestly was a little bit confused. I didn't know if they were doing another 3-way. I thought the winner from the first match, the winner of the second match, those 2 guys were going to fight Rollins. I didn't know that they were going to have a main event where Reigns would fight against Finn. But definitely when they put Finn in that first match, I felt it in my gut. I mean, like, I know that my friends Miguel and my friends Ravi, we go to, SummerSlam, we go to WrestleMania each and every year, and I get geeked up, and most of the time I'm wrong, but I just, like, could feel it. Like, I know I've said this 1,000 times. I remember at WrestleMania 27, when we were watching The Undertaker versus Triple H, I knew that Triple H wasn't going to win that match, but because of the fact that Triple H is my favorite wrestler, I wanted to really believe that Triple H was going to win that match because I wanted to root for my favorite guy. I didn't want his match to sort of be just another Undertaker match where Undertaker beat the guy. But I remember when he picked him up and he hit that tombstone, I was a lot like a lot of people that were out there. I know that people going into that match were thinking, if anybody's going to beat Undertaker, it's going to be Triple H. Triple H at that time, because NXT really hadn't taken off yet, Triple H was like one of the most hated guys there was in the world of professional wrestling because of the fact that people thought he had everything handed to him, becoming the new sort of moving on to becoming the new Vince McMahon, that he had Vince McMahon's ear, he got everything that he wanted, he had the championship handed to him, he had the main event handed to him. But in my mind, I've always thought that Triple H is one of the best wrestlers there's ever been on the show. You know, when I was growing up during the Attitude Era, and, if it came down to it and we had to order the pay-per-view and it was $30 or $40, and I had to throw in my fair share, if Triple H was wrestling in the main event, if Triple H was wrestling in one of the top 2 matches, maybe top 3 matches, I knew that Triple H match was going to be worth my money because I thought that he always went out there and gave the best match of the night in my mind. But I know I can feel it right now, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I reached over, and I can't remember if it was Ravi or Miguel's arm, but I grabbed their arm and I yanked it as hard as I could, and I yelled at them, "He's gonna win it. He's gonna fucking win it." And that's honestly how I felt when just Stephanie McMahon said Finn Balor's name, and Finn Balor was standing there on the ramp. He was standing next to R-Truth. Seth Rollins was standing behind him. He almost had a look of being surprised that in his, Raw debut, he was going to be wrestling for a chance to wrestle for the new Universal Championship, which to me, honestly, reminds me a lot of the Global Championship in TNA. I know that, a lot of people point out a lot of different things, whether if it's like the NXT Championship looking a lot like the X Division Championship in TNA, or, basically the Wyatts and the New Day fighting at the compound reminded a lot of people of the Hardy fight that went down on Impact the week before. The Claire Lynch storyline was sort of borrowed by WWE. It's sort of like, the writers watch TNA, and even though TNA is a joke and nobody really supports it, everybody can sort of point and say that WWE takes things from them. But I don't know. Finn Balor being put into that match, I thought was really big. And honestly, right off the bat, I really felt like he was going to win it. And, he did. And then he moved on. And it wasn't until I was driving home from work and I was talking to my friend Justin and I was talking to my friend Mike that they told me that he was going to wrestle again in the main event. He had to wrestle against Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns is Roman Reigns. I mean, like, Roman Reigns is the guy that you can definitely tell they're trying to make into the new John Cena. We've been doing this for the last 2 years. Definitely Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins is a big match. But Finn Balor, in his debut night in WWE wrestling on the main roster, going out and beating a guy like Roman Reigns and wrestling against Seth Rollins, that's a really good match. As I was going throughout the day and I knew that I knew that that Finn Balor was going to be having his debut match on Raw, I kept on trying to think, who's he going to have his debut match against? Would they have Neville come back and it'd be Neville versus Finn Balor? That would be a good match, but the match really wouldn't mean anything. I think that Chris Jericho could have been there, and Chris Jericho could have had a match against Finn Balor, and Balor could have beat him. And, Chris Jericho sort of being a mentor to guys on the show. He's put in a good light. He goes out there and he wrestles a good match. You remember the Beast in the East show, the match that Jericho had against Neville. That was a damn good match. And, Jericho on his podcast has talked about, going over to Japan, having matches against Yoshitatsu, having matches against Kenta. I apologize, Hideo Itami. And, making those matches mean something and trying to draw something out of these guys, for them to have value in WWE and bring them to try to bring them to the point where they can be bigger stars. Jericho doesn't need to go out there and win every match. Jericho doesn't have to go out there and win any matches. Jericho's name is always going to be recognition enough, and it is what it is. I don't like to see him come out there and do those long talking segments. I know that when he came back as a babyface, I said that when he became a heel, it would be better. He became a heel. It didn't really get any better. But when the guy wrestles, he wrestles really good. And to steal from Brandon, the Instant Classic, when you watch Jericho, you got to think of like the fans that are just watching right now that are seeing Jericho wrestle for the first time, that weren't lucky enough to see Jericho wrestle in the late 90s, early 2000s, when he really was at his peak. It's a lot like watching, Ric Flair during the Monday Night Wars and not knowing that Ric Flair was at his peak in the 70s and the 80s as being one of the best wrestlers in the world. And at that point, Ric Flair was still Ric Flair, and he's one of the greatest minds there is in the world of professional wrestling. But Ric Flair wasn't what he once was. He just was sort of living on that name, a lot like Jericho is now. But I don't know, man. I look at SummerSlam, Finn Balor going up against Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship of Monday Night Raw. I think that definitely Roman Reigns has to have some sort of a match. I don't even know who it would be against because of the brand split. But the one match that we do know about is going to be Brock Lesnar against Randy Orton. I think that honestly, in my opinion, Finn Balor versus Seth Rollins is a bigger match. I think that definitely it's going to be the main event. Seeing Finn Balor crawl out there on the stage and make his way towards the ring, definitely he's going to have the demon paint up on, and that is going to be fucking awesome to see a guy main event his first pay-per-view and hopefully bring home the championship. I can't believe it. I mean, I'm just wowed. I mean, here I am thinking that Finn Balor is probably going to wrestle in the opening match of Raw. It's not going to really mean anything. Here he is. He wrestles in a Fatal 4-Way, wins that match, comes back during the main event, beats Roman Reigns, the guy who won the main event at this year's WrestleMania, beating Triple H. And now here we are. And I can't sit here and lie and say that I've been supporting Finn Balor since day number one. I didn't watch him in New Japan until he was already gone. But because of New Japan World, I did go back and watch a lot of the matches that people recommended going back and watching and seeing, the sort of the rise of the Bullet Club and things like that. But I'm ecstatic for the guy. I mean, I don't think it could happen to a better guy. And I really am looking forward to seeing that show. And I know that, SummerSlam was taken away from me last year. It's the first year out there in New York. And I remember the rumors coming that basically it was a one-time thing because WrestleMania 31, they didn't want to have two of the biggest shows in California. And that made a lot of sense. And I was hoping that, it would come back. And it didn't. But New York deserves it. New York getting SummerSlam, having it on a big stage out there is a big deal. And everybody out there on the East Coast, go out there and enjoy it and live it up. It's one hell of a weekend. I got to go to 5 SummerSlams in a row, so I got no hard feelings about it. And I got to go to Access, and I got to hang out with Luke, and I got to hang out with Miguel. I even got to hang out with Justin one year. I lived it up. I had my fun. It is what it is. But I think that Balor is going to beat Rollins. I think it's going to be the main event. And It's going to be one hell of a show.